All right. Morning, Abe.
Hey, good morning, Matt. Happy Halloween.
That's right. Yeah. I see the nice jack-o'-lantern. Is that jack-o'-lantern behind you there? Yeah.
I think so, yeah. I
So
picked something that my kids want to get spooked by too much. So,
there you go. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, speaking of spooky, so we've been talking about the change, right? And uncertainty going on in the markets for like a while now. We've sort of somewhat been, I would say maybe more doom and gloom than maybe some like leadership in real estate could be that's dealing with agents on the local level. Like you do hear people, saying where we are in reality, but then like the options or the optimistic kind of outlook of how we get out of this, right? And it's all been around interest rates. It's always been when interest rates come back down, things are going to take off again. So it's kind of like this. What's gotten a lot of people through a lot of the time leading up to this point since rates gone up is kind of this hope that rates are going to come back down just around the corner, right? And I think that, you know, that's not the hope we believe in. We believe in the strategy of going out and getting business, right? Lead generating more than ever, um, being able to adapt and adjust to some of the other dynamics that are going on changing the industry, right? So I think today, just talking through those ideas and saying why hope of interest rates is not a good strategy. Hope of interest rates coming down is not a good strategy for the foreseeable next, maybe year and a half, maybe, right? Maybe a year, maybe end because I even heard some people the other day at the end of 2024, someone in leadership, pretty high level in real estate. Oh, when rates start coming down next year, you know, and I thought, you know, that's like yesterday's kind of idea, right? Like that's not, and they could, right? And if they do, great, but that's not a good hope, right? So anyway, so yeah, you've talked about like some of the things you've seen. So go ahead as far as the banking.
yeah. It's just one of those things that we know we can't control. Abe Lim, Matt Hartman, Agent X, we can't control the interest rates right now, right? We could hope and pray that they come
Right.
down. But if our strategy is just hope and pray, I think again, I think you said it really well in our last office meeting. When a storm comes, if you're just holding on, chances are you're not going to make it, right? You got to
Right.
develop a strategy. You got to move, and so um, I think the big thing is, we know what we can't control, right? And interest rates one of those things, but there's a whole lot we can work at and do our best to try to control and take into our own hands. And so I think that's some of the stuff we wanted to talk about today.
Yeah, and I think, um, you know, I think that there's chief among those things is obviously how to maximize your efficiency and effectiveness in lead generation, right? And so, I believe like there's always been a case for being a listing agent and going out and getting listings. Um, just based on the fact that it's just the exponential kind of growth from when you get one listing, you can get more listings from it. You get buyers from that listing because you get leads coming in. And then also theoretically, it kind of guarantees a sale at some point as long as the sellers are reasonable about adjusting their price and listening to the market, right? And so there's that. Um, you also get a lot more advertising and local kind of. So there's just a lot of growth that comes from listing and a little more guarantee there in most markets, right? So I think now what we're seeing with the kind of the change in sort of some of the ideas towards compensation models, it even kind of makes that argument a little bit stronger of like, hey, if you want to be guaranteed compensation, an easy way, right? You have a listing. So one of the things that we've been seeing a lot more success with, it's always worked, but I think it's even becoming a little more mainstream is cold calling, right? Because I think a lot of people historically just, I mean, that's probably one of people's number one fears, right? Is cold calling. It's like public speaking, cold calling. It's just that fear of rejection. Even not in fear of rejection. Sometimes we talked about how kind of like it's also values, right? Like maybe your self perception. Like I'm not a cold caller. Like I can't cold call people. Like that's beneath me almost, right? In some ways, some people have that sort of attitude about it. Um, I know it is embarrassing to yourself to get rejected. Like, right, there is a little, no one's around to see it, but you still feel that sort of. those feelings of like kind of embarrassment. So anyhow, all this to say, I think that the one thing that's true though is that I can say is that if you cold call the right way, you will get listings. So then the question becomes, am I willing to commit to learning how to cold call the right way? And that probably starts with the question of, what does it look like? What does cold calling look like? What do I have to say? What do I have to do it the right way? And then could I palette doing that, right? So I just think it's something worth investigating for a lot of agents. And have you ever cold called before, by the way? In
No.
any capacity in life? Okay.
Oh, in life, yeah, definitely.
Okay.
My first, my first real like corporate job was at the end of my freshman year. I had this little internship at a like an internet marketing company, and half my
Right.
job was like the cold call. Right, hated
Okay.
it. Felt, pretty like low level because of my pay as a cold
Right.
caller, but
Right.
also just the activity of it. Just again, I've always had it in my mind as something like, like I don't want to like stoop to that. I don't want to uh, like go that low, right? It always felt like a base level tactic in sales. Um, and so it's been also like a mental kind of hurdle for me, right? As we've been talking about this market and what it really takes to build success in not just one cycle but many cycles, right? The idea of cold calling. And there's a really excellent book. God, what's the title of it? Keith Ferrazzi wrote this book. What's the title of it, Matt? It's
Cold calling, Keith Ferrazzi.
Keith
I have to
Ferrazzi.
look it up.
It's like building. It's like basically a networking book. We'll have
Okay.
to post it.
Oh, Never Eat Alone. I'm sorry, you're talking about Never Eat
Never eat
Alone.
alone. Never eat alone.
Yeah.
That's
Okay.
right.
Yeah.
I've been like
Sorry,
preaching this
I was
book for the
thinking
last
about
like few
cold
months. I
calling
totally
books. I think
forgot.
about a cold calling
No,
books.
no,
That's
no, no. Yeah.
yeah.
Keith Ferrazzi, Never Eat Alone, and it's really about like kind of another like negative word in my mind, like
Right.
networking, quote unquote, right?
Oh, right.
And really kind of peeling that back. So I think what the book does really well is it just kind of brings the humanity back into networking, and how
Right.
really it's about just again starting relationships from nothing, right? Bringing value to the people that you meet, and then taking things from there. And so cold calling for me, even even the words cold call or cold calling just sounds so like like I don't know, really like sterile, right? um
Yeah.
but I wonder if there's a way to look at cold calling where it's really trying to create an opportunity to connect with a buyer, a seller, let's say in the real estate market, in a very natural way, right? And I just recently was kind of looking through YouTube and found this channel where she gives a really this God, what's her name, Kaylee something, but gives a really good description as to why people hate cold calling and as to why people fail at it, right? And
Right.
one of the reasons is we've scripted the crap out of cold calling. And so when people get on the phone and start like going off the script, um, maybe they feel a certain way, maybe the people receiving that or the people being called feel a certain way. And I know when I'm cold called, I instantly hang up if I know it's a cold call, because I know they're going to take me through kind of their script and try to override my objections, right? Things like that,
Right.
things that
Right.
they're trained to do. And I just don't have the time or the patience for it, right? And so but I think bringing back the humanity of call, even, and just trying to connect with people a little bit more naturally and bring value to them, if that's what cold call is, I think probably a lot more people can digest that, right? um, and it's weird,
Absolutely.
sometimes we need those things. We need those scripts. We need sometimes the things to talk about. We need a couple things to keep fodder for the conversation, right?
Yeah.
But
Well, I
I
think
also sense, yeah. Go ahead.
no. I'm sorry. No. So I was gonna say, my one experience with cold calling on a pretty consistent basis was I worked at the UCLA call center. So I called alumni to ask for money for the school, right? Um, but and then and I had a pretty logical script, right? It was very logical. I didn't have to say the words, but basically the kind of main gists were: one, your current degree from UCLA is only really worth as much as the current reputation of the school. So, we need help keeping the school good. And then the second part of that was only 20%, even though it was a state school, comes from funding from the state for all the different research library that we have. And, keeping that research institution designation is really important. So there's all these things of talking about those. And it made sense to me, like why they had a self-interest in giving, right? And so like it was, so I had those kind of frameworks, but I was able to talk about it with them and go, and what's good is the audience that's calling were alumni who kind of were like, oh, back at UCLA, kind of brought back those days at UCLA for them. For the most part, it was like, so it was a pretty good conversation. Or two, someone who was totally busy blew me off and said, I'm not interested, right? But normally it wouldn't be a call where I had to like argue about something like, or try to sell them on something. It was just, I presented it and, hey, do you want to give any money? And, it was pretty easy to get the donation. So anyway, the point is, but then I went to go into the senior gift, try to call like other students, my own peers, to ask them to give money for the senior gift. And at that point, it was much more scary to call because it was just kind of like you're cold calling your friends, it was like already I was set up for failure in my own head just based on the kind of embarrassment of having to call my peers, Now, I didn't know 99% of them, right? Because it's a big school. But it was just still like having to call through people that I knew what they might be thinking, because you're a little more cynical and kind of a smart ass about things when you're a college student, right? So I just got a lot more negativity on those calls, right? In some extent. But the point is, like, I think what you're saying about the scripted part is what I was trying to get to is it's no understanding, like knowing the value you can potentially bring to people that's logical and that's not trying to push them or sell anything to them, right? It's like, hey, I'm here. I've got some logical things to talk about. They make sense. And I'm coming with the best intentions. Like I'm not, and that's one thing to give credit to Ricky Carruth, who I've worked with pretty closely in the past. I really do think like when it comes to cold calling, he's got the right idea. He's just trying to build an SOI within a geographical area. He's trying to build his database of people he takes care of that he's out looking out for within a geographical spot. So it's not like he's trying to find someone that's ready to sell right now. He's not trying to convince anybody of anything. He just calls with the best of intentions saying, how can I help you? Is there anything I can do for you? I'm a local agent. And then just kind of does the modified, what kind of is like the Brian Buffini mayor campaign of saying, hey, if you were going to do something down the line though, do you have an agent in the area you'd work with? And if they say no, say, hey, well, I'd love to stay in touch with you. That okay, I'd love to get your email. And he's just calling for emails. And then he creates this email database. He has their phone number already. He's called them. He has their email now. And now he just keeps in touch with them with a weekly email. So it's the most simple real estate system I've ever seen. And he just interviewed an agent the other day that I've known and spent some time with, like at conferences. Her name is Rachel Worrell. She went from like 25,000 like 4 years ago in commissions to like now making over $500,000 a year just through the cold calling methodology he's taught. Now there's always these stories about that, but just knowing her personally and knowing kind of where she was coming from, and then seeing some of the people in our brokerage also that cold called, I'm a believer now in that system that it really does work if you're willing to do it, right? And so, yeah,
100%. Yeah, and as someone that in my career hasn't cold called. Seeing the need for it though now in this market than before, definitely I feel like there's a lot of value, and really it is just getting in front of people and creating that relationship that wasn't there, right? You said something interesting though that I think you and I have both kind of talked about this for a while, and I feel like it was missing in my career, right? And it's something I always encourage new agents to really think about and really start investing in, was the geo farm, right? You mentioned that Ricky Carruth, is kind of creating more SOI within the geo farm, right?
Right.
And really, I just think there's so much value to that, especially if you live there or you're vested there in some way, you have a business there, you own property, whatever it is, that all of a sudden you're not calling as an outsider in, right? You're almost calling as a neighbor in that neighborhood and trying to create more relationship in that neighborhood. So then it becomes very easy to kind of follow up with that, right? Like, I'm Asian, obviously, and for us Asians, it's really hard to accept something from someone without giving something first, right? And I
Mhm.
think I run into this a lot with agents who are Asian, right? Or kind of have that mentality. It's like, well, no, I don't want to cold call. I don't want to knock on the door. I feel like I'm trying to take something from them, but
Right.
it's just not culturally fitting for me, right? Um, and so when you work in a geo farm and you do get those contacts, um, in some ways, in my mind, what I have to get over that feeling, and I know it's just not an Asian thing, right? But it's that like I want to give them something. Well, when you get their contact information, when you have their email, you can bring value to them, right? You can invite them to your events that you want to do in that neighborhood or whatnot, or whatever little Halloween kind of thing, haunted house you
Right.
have, right, going on for the community.
Right.
Little things like that where you can give to them, versus it feel like, hey, I'm just trying to make them my client. I'm just trying to take something from them.
No, absolutely. Yeah. And I think that's where people who are adverse to like a geo farm because, oh, I've wasted tons of money, I've spent tons of money, right? And it's likely because they were sending postcards or doing thing that was very uh, not what you do to create a relationship with somebody. you know,
Right.
normally you don't, if you want to become friends with somebody, you don't send them a postcard that talks about how great you are and how many homes you sold or I just did this, right? It's you usually start with a conversation and introducing yourself and have it. And so I think that's where people need to think about a geo farm as saying, no, I need to build as many relationships and get as many people out there to really think, hey, I'm a pretty good person to know and someone they wouldn't mind, knowing and trusting with things, right? And so I think it just starts with that relationship approach within a geo farm, like you're saying. Yeah. So I think that's where, if people just get to that, if people get that in their head, like the people that do well, and I talked about this before, like if you're good at open houses, you'll probably be good at door knocking if you just get over your fear of just knocking on that door because you can build rapport with people quickly. Like if you're good at open houses, you know how to kind of read body language. You're probably good at like kind of redirecting conversations to where you want to go, to where you can really get to the bottom of like what their intentions are pretty quickly, right? You have those skill sets, so you'd probably be just as good at door knocking, right? Because you're face to face, you're able to do that. And I think the same thing, if you're a good SOI person, like you know how to really build those relationships with people, like to throw parties and to entertain and bring value to them that makes them want to stay a part of your business, then parlaying that into a farm should be really easy too if you think about it that way, right? Like you don't have to think about it like, oh, I've got to spend a bunch of money on postcards and door hangers, so I'm going to go get some lender to partner with me to put a door hanger on every door, because you're thinking very transactional. You're thinking people just want to like look and go, oh, hey, I do want to sell my house, let me call this person, right? It's like, no, build a brand equity for the long term with people by building that trust. It's not going to become right away. You could stumble over something right away, but it's going to take that time to cultivate. And I think that's the same thing with cold calling. I was just talking to someone the other day. Is there, you say something?
No, it's 100%. I just I think, you know, it reminds me of the golf swing, strangely. Um,
Yeah,
and it's weird, when you just think of getting a club in your hand and swing the ball, at the ball, and you do it without too many thoughts in your head. You find yourself swinging pretty naturally, and pretty like fluidly, right? And then all of a sudden you step up to the ball, and then you have all kinds of swing thoughts in your head, and maybe this is like the script in door knocking
right, right,
or in
right,
cold calling. What's the script? Like how many seconds do I need to keep them on the phone again? Like so that it generates like a potential lead and there's more success to this, like all that. Like when you start overthinking that and you start to really get too focused in on, let's say, a commission or like making them your client or something like that, your game gets thrown off, right? Your swing is not natural, right? When you're very naturally someone who hosts parties and makes friends like out of nowhere and is able to conversate with people, and create relationship out of thin air. When you start going into this with too many swing thoughts, then you might not,
right,
again, not be doing yourself just right. You might be getting paralyzed by how much thought is going into this versus just being yourself, just
right.
creating a relationship, the way you normally do, throwing a party the way you normally do, right? Having conversations with people, your neighbors, the way you normally do, right?
Right.
And
Yeah.
so as someone who hasn't cold called, that helps me also break down in my mind, like, okay, this isn't that bad, right? Generally, we're pretty good on the phone and conversating with people. We have fun at parties, right? We throw
Yeah.
good ones, and so let's just take that natural kind of swing thought and let's put it
Yeah.
into this forum, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, you know, like you said, yeah, having a framework of knowing your outcomes, right? Like knowing, meaning like, hey, what I'm trying to get though by the end of this conversation, I think is okay to have, right? Like, and I know it sounds transactional, but I'm saying like just meaning I hope I can get their email so I can stay in touch. That's like my goal of the call. Or I hope I can get them to agree to come to my party, whatever it might be, but knowing outcomes. But yeah, being scripted in that process definitely can take away the whole naturalness of it. I think you just have to get good at um, and one of the interesting things too, just one more takeaway of this I listened to the podcast with Ricky Cruz and Rachel Worrell on cold calling, was that she broke into the luxury market, and she talks about kind of how she has like a pretty humble background, like her like a kind of like a blue collar kind of background, and never thought she would be able to like sell multi-million dollar homes. And through cold calling, she actually was able to like kind of break into that market, which a lot of people want to break into the luxury market. And her being able to just cold call for years and years without seeing necessarily immediate results, but kind of starting to get a little here and there, but then built this database of people in this luxury market she was trying to get into, and now is selling tons of homes in there, right? So it's a matter of just there's plenty of testimony, I guess, or evidence that not only can you break into like a farm that way, but you can even break into a farm maybe that a lot of people would love to break into, because you're getting directly to the homeowner. You're on the phone with them, and yeah, 9 out of 10 are going to shoot you down, hang up on you, not want to talk to you. But you just need that 1 in 10, and continue to get that 1 in 10 that's going to actually, be willing to stay in touch with you. And so, but yeah, I think. I think the idea of strategy and saying I want a geo farm, and then the tactic is cold calling, or the tactic door knocking, whichever one you want to do, or the tactic is throwing parties and doing community events, whatever those tactics are. But I think the commitment to just a farm and understanding that I want to get the sellers in this area and I want to be the agent here is really the strategy. And then the tactics can be manyfold, and you can always add tactics, but the strategy needs to be committed to and saying, this is what I want to do. And I think it has to go from a relational standpoint to get there. So switching gears a little bit, speaking of like one of the things, it's this Sitzer Burnett case that's going on right now, right? Like we see the testimony from different experts now. We've had like expert witnesses that have talked more about the economics of the cooperation. And there's just a lot of logic that's gone into it. One of the things that, when you look at the listing agreement, it says you're going to pay us, the listing brokerage, let's say 5%. And then it's up to us if we want to cooperate with that. Because theoretically, if I get the buyer myself, I'm still getting the full 5%, because that's what you're paying us as a brokerage. So why does it matter to the seller what I do with that money or not? And they're kind of speaking out of both sides of the mouth. Like if you want, the argument is, okay, this hurts the buyers. Well, if the buyer has to pay money out of pocket, that might hurt the buyers. But also, I thought this was on behalf of sellers, not buyers. So how are they using arguments that it hurts buyers when, it says they'll bring costs, like when they're saying we're selling on behalf of sellers. So it's just a really illogical kind of court case that I feel like they're really going to try to play on just argumentative legal tactics and play on the heartstrings of a jury, right? So I'm hoping that maybe some of the logic that's kind of gotten injected the last few days will help kind of see that the system is actually, one, really in no way are they being forced to pay the buyer's commissions. They're paying the listing agent commissions, and the listing agent do whatever they want. But two, that how does this hurt the seller at all, right? Like, in any way, when they have full choice over whether to pay the full commissions, pay, 4%, 3%, 2%, they can pay whatever they want to pay. And that's how we always approach it. So anyway, it's kind of like unraveling a little bit. And when you look at the logic and not all the emotion and fear and the gotcha stuff of like, you said in this training this, and to Gary Keller, whoever else, now it's just like logical people explaining the economics and the structure of it. It seems a lot much more like, yeah, what is this lawsuit even about? But anyhow, yeah. So, but speaking of that, if whether or not this changes whether they win or lose, I think that the buyer broker agreement and sort of the representation of buyers, I've always agreed or believed in that anyhow. But I think that now there's more argument to say, like, yeah, there'll be some shifting in industry. Cooperation still might be under fire in general. This is not this is the first of maybe many more attacks. So we've been talking a lot about buyer broker agreements, is what I'm trying to get to here. That working through a buyer process, getting a buyer broker agreement, I think is still the way of the future. And I think that just like doubling down on trying to figure out how to lead gen at the top funnel for sellers and get your own leads there. I think that working through the process with buyers, if you're going to work with buyers through buyer broker, is the way of the future. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. I think, in light of the recent, this court case and whatnot, and just some conversations, I do see a huge value in having a broker buyer agreement. I think in the past, I've never had one signed by a buyer. I always felt it was kind of an awkward dance, and we've all had those kind of nightmare experiences with buyers at times. You show them 50 homes, and on home 51 that they like, they end up going with the listing agent, right?
Right.
And you only find out as they're mid escrow and they have questions about how to navigate this, that they call you and say, "Hey, I'm in escrow. What do we do about this or that?" And you're like, "Oh
right.
man," so yeah, I do see the huge value in it. I think my thought for buyer broker agreements is they shouldn't be treated as something that then backs a buyer into a corner, right, and makes them work with you, right, contractually. Like that's not the spirit of it per se, right? But it is an education of what the buying process could entail and why you are entitled to a fee, right, as a
Right.
buyer representative. But it shouldn't be, again, kind of misconstrued to like, okay, I got him to sign it, I'm going to make money, right? It's not that. It's always I'm giving you value, right, and I am earning my value as your agent, right?
Right.
It reminds me of someone in the San Gabriel Valley area that I talked to fairly recently, another brokerage, a friend, and he shared with me his buyer kind of process and going through a buyer broker agreement and charging no less than 3% and sharing with the buyer why they earn the 3% and why he's a value. And again, he has kind of a geo farm in that area and comes across, off-market listings, knows the residents really well in the area, and maybe has access to a little bit more information than they would without him, right? So he takes them on that way, and they sign up, and they gladly sign that agreement. And generally, he gets his commission from the listing side, right, in that co-op agreement. But when there's a shortfall in the 3%, the buyers will pay the fee because they feel like they got value from him, and they refer him, right, to other buyers who are looking to buy property because it was such an excellent process. I also think of someone that I've worked with in the past, who's on our agent team and is coming back to our brokerage. He was extremely busy. He was working with buyers, sellers, just tons of business, and he would tell his buyers, "I'm so sorry, I can't work with you at the moment. But if you wait 2 months, I should have a spot available for you as a buyer to work with," right? Like, he was that busy. And he limited himself to about 10 buyers at a time because he didn't feel like he could service more than 10, right? Running around doing showings and really taking care of them. And I was surprised he can take care of 10 with all the listings he had. So he was that good. And that's the point, is they wanted to work with him. It wasn't his way to just kind of, again, corner someone and make them work with you so that you earn a commission, regardless of what happens there, right? You're always giving value to your clients in that way and being that excellent.
Well, that's an interesting point. Like what you said there is people would refer and people would, and that's where it's the paradigm shift for agents that needs to happen, right? And that's what we're talking a lot about here is paradigm shifting as far as like how you've always looked at something, but as far as cold calling or farming. But when it comes to working buyers, consumers only know what we show them as agents, and all of us show them the same thing, right? Like, agents just follow each other, and so their reactions to what we show them, we know those reactions well. But we show them something different, then maybe some of their reactions might be a little bit different. Like they're willing to actually here's what we do know from what you're saying and from my experience of what I've trained agents and what we do is buyers are willing to commit to you as a buyer's agent under contract and are willing to pay you out of pocket some portion of the commissions. We know that. And so that just to a lot of agents that seems so no, like come on, people, they don't even won't even like commit to like seeing homes with me. They're going to see homes with different people, or they won't, they want to ask me for commissions. Actually, they want me to give them 1% back when they buy. And there are those people out there too. So as a business owner, like there's people that would never pay more than $1 for coffee, right? For a cup of coffee. So they're going to go to 7-Eleven and buy the, dollar coffee or go to McDonald's, whatever the cheap coffee is. But there's some people that'll pay $8 for their morning coffee every single day. So both buyers exist of coffee. So you have to decide, do you want to be a gas station, coffee place, or do you want to be Starbucks, right? Like you can decide who your business is going to attract. And the people that refer from after having that experience, they're going to refer people with the premise saying, hey, yeah, work with so-and-so. They have this buyer consultation process. They take you through the whole thing, and they're endorsing your product in which you get paid with a contract and a hire. And that's really what the buyer broker agreement is. All it is, yeah, like it's not a gotcha, I got this, this buyer stuck with me now. It's this buyer hired me now, and I'm working with a client that's hired me rather than working with a consumer that I'm hoping is going to be my client. And the only time they become a client is if you get them into escrow, right? Like if I actually get them into agreement. So I'm actually trying to sell them the whole time I'm working with them until we get into escrow. And that to me is more of a manipulative process than sitting down with them and saying, hey, whatever house you buy, whenever you buy, you're just hiring me for it. And I'm never going to try to like rush you into buying or hoping you buy soon or any because you're just a client of mine and I'm already hired by you. I'm not trying to get you into contract so you can become a client. Anyway, all this is under if you go to circuittraining.com, just quick plug, game changer for working with buyers. There's a whole training on there that gives all the philosophies about why you work with buyers. There's actually, I found this through the trial, there's actually a national association of exclusive buyer agents. So it's an association of people that belong to this that basically only work with buyers. They will not work with sellers. They only work with buyers. And they have a whole concept of why that's needed, why the industry needs that. And they testified in the court case. That's how I heard about them. But there really is like all the logic points towards hiring a buyer's agent. It's just that we work illogically because of that fear of, confronting. Like agents don't like to have to like ask for, like right. The scariest part for agents is to ask for someone to sign a contract with them. Like that's most agents. They don't like to have to ask. They're worried about the commissions, having to ask for that. As a matter of fact, that's why research shows that agents bring up commissions before sellers even bring up commissions. Like agents are the ones that bring up the commission conversation because they're so insecure about asking for that money. They actually object to their own commissions before the sellers do often, And so I think it's the same thing that people are afraid to get buyer broker agreements because it just seems like I'm asking them for commissions. But anyhow, the point is if you have a good process for it, you know what you're doing, you're doing the same kind of value proposition presentation that you would do with a listing presentation. In a buyer, it's not hard to do. But anyhow, but what are your thoughts? I mean, what are some of your objections you've heard like in the past of why not to do it this way through a buyer broker? Have you heard?
Yeah, I think we've covered some of them, but it really is like it's awkward, right? It's like I don't want them to feel like they have to work with me, right? I don't want them to feel like it's just about the money, and all that. I think you said it well. That not having that conversation up front and then just showing homes is a little bit more at times maybe manipulative, but also like just like again like haphazard, right? And no wonder why sometimes after you show 50 homes, someone will go to the listing agent and whatnot. And I think for me, again, if things are trending that way and people need to really take advantage of this broker buyer agreement because now the laws are changing also, potentially, that you should rest assured that the agreement is something worth signing. The buyers should feel that way. If you're
Right.
excellent, if you're good at what you
Good
do,
point.
right?
Good point.
Okay,
Big point.
that yeah, then you should feel good about this, right? So in that sense, yeah, it's important to be really good at the buyer consultation, right? Because you want to be able to share what value you have, but you also be better, be damn sure that you're a great agent, right? That the
Right.
buyers are going to have a wonderful experience with and get a property that suits them, and that you're going to help them navigate that kind of process, right? And make sure that they feel great about it. Um, I think the like elephant in the room sometimes is that agents are really focused on their commissions. They're not really focused on becoming excellent agents, and
Mhm.
they're manipulating these tactics to corner people into making money. And
Right.
that's what it can't feel against. That's like the extreme of why people don't want this to happen, right? Or don't want to go and have people sign a buyer broker agreement because they don't want people to feel that way, especially buyer clients or whatnot. Especially if they're friends and family.
Right.
And so how do we get over that? Well, yeah, be a damn good agent, right? Be extremely good at what they do, at what you do, and know that you're giving value to your clients because they're working with you. But if you're insecure about how good of an agent you are, or you're not a good agent, right? Then
Right.
yeah, it's going to be it's going to be an awkward dance no matter what, right? So yeah, and I think that's my general thing in this market, right? It's let's be excellent, right?
Right.
The half-assed ways of doing things aren't going to carry you in this market, right? The like minimal effort, max money kind of thing is not going to carry you in this market. The extra effort, excellent like service, and your diehardness to your clients is what's going to carry you in this market, and not some like tactic that's just simply makes it easy for you to get new business, right? You really got to
Right.
be good. You really got to be
Absolutely.
good.
100%. And I think that just comes from knowing the best practices for each thing, right? Like I think that some best practices have become more commoditized, right? Like I think like for a listing agent, one of the things I told agents years ago, and it was kind of more not controversial, but more like something people weren't saying was like, hey, like when Redfin sells a house, for instance, they're doing a good job. Like they're taking good photos. They're doing, it's you can't try to fight Redfin on, we do photos or this. It's like they do a pretty common job of those commoditized type things of taking twilight photos, good photos, drone shots, like staging even, right? All those things, they're there. We all do those things now. And if you're not doing those things, then you're really subpar in the sense of what you're doing for the that's right. If you're not doing those things. But the place where you can compete on is your ability to communicate, service, to negotiate in a thoughtful way that leaves everybody, in a feeling good about the transaction, but still gets your clients kind of where they need to go as far as terms, timing, price, being able to avoid pitfalls or legal things that can come up, all the different intangibles that can't be commoditized because it's the value you bring as a professional, right? Those are the places where you need to make clients feel secure and confident in who you are. And that goes on the listing side, but it also goes on the buying side when it comes to how to make sure that we talk through the features and the benefits of what you want in a home, and make sure that you're like not settling on something just because you feel some sort of anxiousness about getting a home right away. Making sure that we think about you know the timing of it, making sure that the loan products out there that we're talking through all those, and I make sure I get you as many options as possible, right? Making sure that when we do come to finding the right home, that we're so confident that's the right home that you're willing to play ball, whatever it takes to try to win with the terms and how we present that offer. I know if you've ever bought a house yourself, you know what it's like to be the buyer and the agent, to know both, and you start realizing that sometimes, like, you feel the same fears sometimes and like nervousness about things, but you also know what it feels like to want to compete and win and get that house because it's going to be your house. And when you know how, hey, I got to make sure that they're willing to compete and that I'm willing to compete with them and know what I need to do and what they need to do and not be afraid to tell them what they need to do to compete and to push. So there's a lot of intangibles in that buyer's agent thing, that to be excellent, you can't just be a person that just shows the door or opens the door and then just write an offer using a card form. You got to know how to use that offer as a tool to make sure that you present things in a way that makes the seller get the seller's attention. Now we'll see how competitive the market is in the coming years, but in the last 5 or 6 years, you weren't making an offer to purchase. You were competing with other offers. It wasn't like, hey, I'm going to negotiate with you. It was like, no, I'm trying to compete and stand out in some way amongst the other offers, right? And there's a lot of ways to stand out. So anyway, we'll get all that detail, but the point is, being excellent is absolutely the first step, I think, in being able to ask someone to hire you for such an important job, whether it's selling the property or whether it's helping them buy the property. Yeah, and you're right. It's such a tactic-driven industry. It's always like how to get 30 listings in 30 days, and everything. All the trainings are those type of like gimmicky or tacticy things, rather than, hey, how to be an excellent realtor. It's like, oh, no one wants to take that training, Like, I mean, don't get me wrong. And I know a lot of agents, especially our agents, a lot of people out there, they do want to know how to be more excellent. It's just the fact is, when you are running a business and you have the anxieties of where's your next check going to come from, a lot of times the thing you're going to click on is how to get the business, not necessarily how do I become better at doing the business, right? It's a snap. Lead generation is very important. So, I joke about that, but I understand the dynamic of why sometimes people are looking more for how to get business than they are to how to be excellent. But you gotta commit to both.
Yeah, and I would imagine, even for myself, in some ways, I got to look at what I do and how I do it and how I can kind of up my games. But it's like, especially when the market has been so crazy and so like red hot, for all these years. Maybe agents haven't had the opportunity or the time or even the need to like really just sit down and look at themselves, right? And look at their business, look at how they conduct themselves, right? Am I even an enjoyable person to be around, with buyers when we go look at homes, right?
Right.
Do I come off annoying at all? Or do I talk too much? Or do I talk down, like those type of things, right? You've never had to really think about. But it's now, it's kind of one of those times where you start to really investigate these things. And it's funny. You see people like selling their homes, right? They lived in their homes for like 30 years a certain way, right? And it wasn't in the best condition. There's like holes here and there in the walls, right? They lived with a little bit of mold here and there, right? And they're good with that. But the moment they decide, hey, I want to sell, okay, I need to make this place look good, right? Like I need to do some renovations here and spend the money. It's like, man, why didn't you do that while you live there, right? So you can kind of enjoy it, right? And so it's funny though. There's a lot of things that just don't go examined, right? When you live there and you've been used to that same mode of living for that many years. I'd say it's the same way when you're running a business or you're a real estate agent, right? Why are we doing things the way we do them? Well, it just hasn't been examined for 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 years, right? And when we look at them, and this is a great opportunity to do it, we can kind of see them again for the first time and think, yeah, does this need to improve? Do I need to change this? Do I need to change the words that I use here, right? Do I need to change how I do my emails? Do I need to change my personal brand even? Do I even have a personal brand? All these things that we haven't looked at. It's an opportunity to look at them now and to really work at it and be excellent and take things to another level.
Absolutely. And I'd say that's where the nuance of business, we're not talking about, the difference in some people's a major lifestyle change is going from selling like 7 homes a year to selling 12 homes a year, right? Like we're not talking about thousands of transactions that we're talking about like in a business like other businesses. You're talking about a very small increase in numbers, 3 or 4 more clients that you get, 5 more clients in a year can make such a difference in your business. And these little changes, these little sometimes subtle shifts in just how you do one thing or how you present ideas can be that difference. And it's not the go like how to the 30 listings 30 days, I keep saying that, but those taking that course or something like that. It's looking at yourself, looking at your business, and understanding where you're losing clients. Is it at the top of the funnel, like at the lead generation place? Like you go to open houses and you're getting no leads. Maybe you got to look at yourself how you're coming across open houses. Or is it in the follow-up? You're not following up. You had all these leads and they just like blew into the wind. Or is it you're actually getting to the table? You're actually showing some homes, and then they go away. They ghost you after you see a few homes. So maybe the process there. Or you go to the listing presentation and you lose. You don't get the listing. Someone else gets it. Like where are those areas of your business, and looking at those things, and just a little nuance. Because I find that, I train in listing presentations a framework, but I find that my listing presentation, when I do them, and I still go on some now, it's like I find that a lot of times we're talking about one small thing, like just the logistics of the move itself and getting rid of the furniture. Because it's like, for instance, recently it was just, how do we get rid of this furniture? That was the biggest thing they cared about. And then just having, it wasn't like my market statistics or how many homes I sold. It was just like, they liked me, they trusted me. I had some, honesty with them about where the market is, where it might be going. Yeah, there was those conversations. But I knew when it came to like what my plan of attack for them had to be, was like, okay, we got to make sure they feel good about all this furniture is going to be accounted for, when they need to get it out, the timing of all that, and it's just, I listened to them and I heard what they were worried about, and we made sure to really spend a lot of time talking about that. I'm not saying that's why the only reason they hired me, but it's that was what we needed to talk about. If I would have brushed over that, let them feeling like that, they might have called someone else, or looked somewhere else, because they were like, we don't feel good about him. I don't know why I don't feel good about him. They might not have said it's because of the furniture thing, but they just know that they just didn't feel like they were in good hands. Like they didn't feel satisfied after that meeting because we didn't spend enough time talking about the furniture stuff. And so I think it's just a matter of listening and having these conversations. And anyway, I don't know where I got off on the tangent, but I'm saying is there's a lot of nuance. I'm saying is it's not just about like these gimmicky, like get them to say yes 6 times and then they'll sign the listing agreement, right? It's like those kind of things. It's about just being able to understand like how to listen to people, how to be good at what you do, and there's more nuance to this business than just the silly tactic type stuff, So, but
Yeah, and it's one thought I had as you were sharing this too is, reputation, right, is important, right?
right,
Within your SOI, your reputation is what gets you kind of the referral business. And then in a geofarm, and again, I think this is why maybe it's important, and maybe this doesn't age well. Maybe in like 2 or 3 years from now, it's not about geofarms anymore, right? I felt like there was like back in the day, it was about geofarms because there was no internet, right? You were selling in your neighborhoods, like
it's all about,
you had some neighborhoods. It was all about geofarms, and now the internet has kind of like made the world kind of our marketplace, right? In some ways, and there's information available to us way more than before. So you can sell anywhere, you can research anywhere as an agent and know enough about that neighborhood or that area to be able to sell. But I do feel like going back to a geofarm and having that not as the only place you do business, but as one kind of like leg of the stool, so to speak, right? Of having a geofarm or niche per se. And focusing on that is a way and a place where you build a reputation, right? In our neighborhood here where I live, there are like 2 or 3 agents that I know have a great reputation, right? One of them walks the neighborhood twice a day, just on her normal kind of walk, right? And says hello to everyone. And she has the reputation of being that agent in that area, right? And she, again, has a listing right next door to my house right now, right? And is doing very well in that sense. And so, but I think you're building your reputation via your excellence, via how your results have been, right? And via what people are saying about you because they like you, right? I think that's where some people fail, right? It's like, oh no, I got them a house like under market, we closed in 14 days or whatever it is. We got the process done. But will they refer you again? Maybe not, because maybe you just plowed through this transaction and didn't take the time to really like nurture the relationship, right? And answer their questions or whatnot. You didn't talk about how you're going to move their furniture or like how that was so important to them. But you were just steamrolling ahead, right? We know agents like this, even in our mix that are that way, right? Will they refer you? Is your reputation good? And it may not just be because you did a good job or you got them a good result. They got to like you too, right? And so that I think that's that. Yeah, again, some agents I think that they fail to look at that. They're like, no, I'm a good agent. I did my job, you know.
Yeah.
But they don't take the time to really to work on that part of the reputation as well. So um,
Yeah, and
yeah,
I think that's where when you talk about the internet, that you take the best of both worlds. You can be an agent who is excellent, like we talked about, an agent who knows how to utilize the internet to be relevant, right? That when they go online, they see that agent too. They don't just see them knocking on their door, walking in the neighborhood. They see them online, and they have relevancy to the real world and where we live now. And then they're also in our neighborhood, right? So it's kind of like, man, how lucky are we that this agent who's amazing online and has videos about this and does that, right? And they're also happen to be in our neighborhood, right? Like it's like people like, but a lot of times people walk in the neighborhood, you don't see them online, you don't see them there. So if you could be someone that can be relevant, excellent, and local and focused on an area, I think that's a huge opportunity for agents who are willing to take that strategy on, you know. Yeah.
Big time.
But,
Big
yeah.
time. So hopefully
Right,
this
well,
is good fodder for our agents.
yeah.
I know we've been getting a question a lot, right? Like, and again, I know our time is up, but what do I got to do right now, Abe? What do I got to do right now, Matt? Are we going to get through this, right? And it's really hard to hear, like, then an answer being, hey, be better at what you do, hone your craft, cold call, get in front of more people, do the things you always didn't want to do, like you always kind of put off, but you got to do them now. And so I think that's the ultimate message, right? Is you got to do these things. You got to make them your own. If you have like some type of allergic reaction to them, like I still do, you know, Matt, you and I have these conversations and I'm always kind of like, oh man, we got to do that. Like we got to train our agents to do this and that. And it's tough, but no, this is what it takes right now. Otherwise, you're going to be standing in the storm, right, holding on, and you're going to get taken away, right? You got to adapt, you got to change, you got to create a game plan, and you got to be excellent.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially the excellence part, because what is it that the people that are selling right now is because they need to, right? It's the death, divorce, it's 5 Ds, right? Death, divorce, diapers, diamonds, and diplomas, right? That's the, right. So the big life change things that make people think about moving, and those things are sensitive. And so being able to have someone in good hands that's referred to you as well, right, and or someone that you know and feel good about, is much more likely to get the deal than going online and finding someone that's cold offline. So I think it's just getting out to the sphere, getting out to look at open houses. Like what you need to do is be excellent and be present. Get out there, get out door to door, get out to the open houses, get out to your SOI and get out there and let them know your business. And then when you do take care of, you have one client right now, take such good care of them that they refer you to more before you're even done with the deal. That's happened to me all my time in my career, is that if you're taking really good care of somebody, at that moment they're thinking about you all the time. And if they hear someone thinking about buying or selling, they're gonna be more likely to refer you at that moment because they're thinking about that process themselves and they're hyper aware of that. So anyhow, yeah. So be excellent, be present, and you'll be okay. So
that's right.
So,
on that note, happy Halloween, Matt.
Happy Halloween. I'll talk to you soon. See you guys.
Yeah. Have a good day, guys.
Bye. All right.